right, so let's talk today about one of the things that really I've been battling probably my entire career as a personal trainer and exercise physiologist, and that is the old I'm afraid to get big thing. You know, people that have degrees in this industry or a lot of experience or whatever we want to call it, like people that really know what they're talking about, that understand the science, that this is a frustrating thing for them too. So it's a frustrating thing for all of us in the industry because, it is just such a fallacy. It's just not true. And, people have the right to believe what they want, of course, but the problem is people are missing out on so many benefits of strength training and working out because of this belief. Now, I will say it has gotten better, not to generalize or anything, but, sometimes some generalization is necessary or at least accurate. But it is mostly a woman thing. It's a female thing to have this fear of getting big. Not always. I've run across different endurance athletes who have had the same fear, and whether they're male or female, and they'll say, well, I don't want to gain any muscle because it's going to slow me down. So it's not entirely a female thing, but it is predominantly a female thing. So let me open with a little story that I've always found to be kind of entertaining and a little bit insane at the same time. When I was young, in my early 20s, working out at this gym in New Smyrna, it was an old rundown free weight style place. So it was great. Got a lot of great workouts in there. It was absolutely fine, but it was your typical, very old school 1980s style gym. And there was a guy that helped out in there a lot, and he did some he called it personal training, but really it was just in its infancy then, and he definitely didn't know what he was talking about as far as really helping people become fit. But he was like one of the bigger guys in the gym, a real strong guy. I knew him okay and everything. Wouldn't exactly call him friends, but he wouldn't exactly call him a friend, but he was someone I knew and got along with okay. And he was known to be a little bit of a hothead. Like, he could definitely go off the chains a little bit. So he was working at the gym one day, helping the owners out just by watching it. Poor owners, a woman comes in and she wants to get a workout in her. She wants to inquire about working out. And, she said, but keep in mind, I don't want to get big. And this guy was a little bit, had a bit of a temper problem. And so this just makes him tee off because he was a bodybuilder trying to get big and all this. Well, he was big, and he just really just unloads on her, explaining to her, you really think it's that easy, that people go to these steps to get big, and they, are trying to eat impeccably, and they're working out with the most ideal, efficient workout program they can. And he alluded to that some people are, taking drugs to do it, and all this kind of thing, and just really rants on her about this. And, was it inappropriate? Of course. But that's kind of who this guy was at this time of his life. So naturally, not really the point of the story, but she does not, I don't remember really, get a membership there. And, in the back of my mind, I remember, because I was working out, just, it's like looking out of the corner of your eye going, oh my God, am I going to have to walk over there, Fortunately, no. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, as insane as his response was, as, inappropriate as his demeanor was and all that, he was right in every aspect of what he was saying. that it is not as easy as people think to put on a little bit of muscle. And it's definitely not easy to put on a lot of muscle. As a matter of fact, a lot of research shows that men who already have a higher capacity to gain muscle because they have a greater amount of testosterone can put on maybe 45 pounds of muscle in their lifetime. 45 pounds. You think that's a lot? No, that's not a lot. 45 pounds over a lifetime, and that is pretty much like when somebody is in their prime. And a woman, roughly about 25 pounds. Again, the difference is because men have much more testosterone than women, and testosterone is a key ingredient to increasing muscle mass. So it's very difficult to put on a substantial amount of muscle. I mean, it can be done and people do it, but it's hard. Like, it just doesn't go on, right? So we have to keep this in mind when we have this fear, because it's just not gonna happen. And you don't know how many times in my own experience I've had that same type of client walk in, and when we're talking about their goals and what they want to accomplish, they want to get stronger. That's great. They want to decrease some body fat. That's great. They want to, look better. What they don't understand a lot of the times is what they're really talking about, though, is slightly, if they can, it's no given, increase their muscle mass. Like, that is critical. And too many times, though, the people have said, well, but I don't want to get bigger. And they might even point to certain spots. I don't want this to get bigger. It's like, well, it's really not going to. Like, if it was going to, you would have known that already. We don't just increase muscle mass because we start lifting weights and doing resistance training. I should say, we don't increase it to the point where it's probably that noticeable, unless you have the genetics for that, and then it's limited unless somebody is taking something anabolically that they should or shouldn't be doing. I'm not here to judge that. I don't personally agree with taking anything synthetically, but there's only so much muscle mass that somebody is going to gain. So the official term for increasing your muscle mass is called hypertrophy. And what hypertrophy means is that the individual muscle fibers themselves have been split and come back to be a little bit stronger within the motor unit of the muscle. So a motor unit houses a bunch of different muscle fibers. So when those muscle fibers get stressed, they respond by splitting and becoming basically duplicates of themselves in a way, meaning that they increase themselves. And so therefore the motor unit gets a little bigger. And when the motor units get a little bigger, the muscle itself, the muscle belly, gets a little bit bigger. So that's hypertrophy. Now, another way people can gain muscle, but it's very controversial, is called hyperplasia. And studies show that that only happens in about 5% of the growth, the muscle growth, and it happens very rarely. Again, somebody would probably have to have extreme genetics for that, and potentially taking something. And what hyperplasia is increase of the muscle fibers themselves, so the numbers. So the primarily way that we get stronger and grow is through what we call hypertrophy. So we don't get stronger without hypertrophy. We don't hypertrophy without getting stronger. So those two things go hand in hand. So when people say, I don't want to get bigger, it's like, okay, but you're really not going to. But most importantly, if you're thinking that way, then you may or maybe aren't going to get stronger either. And then that is not a good thing. And we should want to increase our muscle mass to the best of our abilities, because sarcopenia is one of the leading causes of dysfunction as people age. And sarcopenia is age-related muscle mass loss. And we begin to decline in our muscle mass roughly after the age of 30. We don't have to. It's a whole use it or lose it thing. We don't have to lose that much muscle. We really can maintain quite a bit. So we really want to ward off sarcopenia. So one of the best things we can be doing is to be lifting weights, using resistance strength training, so we can keep as much muscle on our body as possible. So going into it with the whole, I'm afraid of getting bigger is just such a, number one, it's just not true. I mean, genetics is going to determine how much muscle mass you're going to have, and you're going to have to really go out of your way to bulk up. Like these guys that are gaining that 45 pounds over their lifetime are like eating 5,000 calorie a day diets. They might be taking something synthetically. They're lifting weights 6 days a week. I mean, it's really a concentrated effort to get as big as possible. You're not just going to gain a little bit of muscle mass by looking at a weight, right? And I think that's why this guy back in New Smyrna all those years ago got so mad, because it is kind of insulting. So when people are like working their butts off to add some muscle, and you think, well, I'm afraid if I start doing those 8-pound bicep curls, my arms are just going to get too big. It's like, how many people wish it were that easy? How many people are like, okay, so if this is the case, why are people taking things synthetically to try to gain some, but you think you can do some, 6-pound arm curls and your arms are going to be too big to fit into your sleeveless dresses? I mean, come on. That's really, really a very, very silly thing. And also, it's a very inaccurate way to think. We don't just gain muscle mass that way and that easily. And by the way, I heard a trainer colleague of mine say years and years ago, he said, everybody wants to look better and feel better. And I think that's absolutely true. So if people would realize, the people that are afraid of gaining muscle mass would realize that as they lose fat mass, which you will if you're working out, that's the beauty of it. As you lose fat mass, as you lose fat tissue, and you work out and those muscles get a little bit stronger and a little bit bigger, you look leaner, like you look more cut. Why don't people get it that the way to look cut is to have a little bit of muscle mass and decrease your fat mass? That's how people look defined. You can't just define your muscles. Oh, let me work on definition by doing high reps. I mean, that is as dumb as spot reduction. Like, it is simply not thought out, not true, not scientific. That's not the way it works. The way we get toned arms is to have a little bit of muscle on our arms and decrease our fat. Then we look toned. The way to have huge arms, you better have huge genetics. Like, you better have large muscle bellies that you were born with, a high amount of testosterone naturally, be predominantly fast twitch muscle fiber, and be a mesomorph. Do you have all those 4 things? Because those are the things that lead to a real deep increase in muscle mass, okay? High amount of testosterone, mesomorphic body type, fast twitch muscle fibers, and be born with large muscle bellies. Like the muscle bellies themselves is genetically predetermined. So if you have those things, yes, you can get big. And if that's the case, God, count your blessings, because that is a really, really good thing. Because the number one driver of our metabolism is having more muscle. That's the driver of our metabolism. When people say my metabolism slowed down, that's because you lost muscle. Muscle is metabolic. We don't have to lose that. When people diet and get on these stupid low-carb diets and they don't strength train and they lose some weight, I mean, most of the weight they lose is muscle. And then, of course, nobody can sustain that kind of diet forever. So then they go off the diet and then they start gaining weight, and they gain weight even easier than before. Is that a surprise to us? No, you lost muscle mass. You decreased your metabolism. Of course, you gain fat back easier. So, like, it's just a silly myth that I want you to ignore and not believe. And I want you to go to the gym and I want you to strength train so you can get a little bit more muscle, as much as you can, honestly, and get stronger. Got a deal? Got a deal.